and welcome back to The Give and Go. I'm your co-host, Reynoso, here with my boy,
Soltero. What's up, guys?
Qatar is up next on our docket, and we're talking about the World Cup host. They were selected a decade ago to host this tournament, and they've really embraced it. So Qatar arrives to this tournament with really no history in the sport or in World Cups. This is going to be their first true appearance at the FIFA World Cup, and so that's so interesting because that's the first team and only team at this World Cup that will be a brand new baby, man. Completely new experience. Have gone through a lot of renovations as they've taken on the responsibility of being a host, but also developing a new system in order to hopefully bring in better players and a better league as well. Qatar has been trying to progress these past few years, and that was shown with what they were able to do in 2019 when they won the AFC Asian Cup, being crowned champions of that tournament. That was, in a sense, the biggest indication that the progress that they had been trying to achieve was ultimately very much worth it. So Qatar that quickly became champions of a tournament and are now coming into this tournament being drawn into Group A, where the hosts will be playing against Ecuador, Senegal, and the Netherlands. This team is low-key like an enigma, man, because we don't really know what they can amount to. They've made appearances in both the Gold Cup and the Copa America. They won the AFC Championship. So it's just like, where do these teams stand, man? Are they going to completely fall out in this tournament? Or are they going to ride with that host high that every single host in this tournament has ever gotten, leading them to potentially something truly special? Truly interested to discuss this team because their tournament can go in so many different ways, man. There's so many different paths for which Qatar can land in. And ultimately, I'm interested to know, where do you think they'll go?
I love a good host nation story when it comes to World Cup football, man. I really do. Just looking back at the past World Cups, dude, we've seen some incredible performances from the host. I think the one that really does stand out, I guess from a surprising standpoint, is Russia. I mean, dude, making a deep quarterfinal run, losing out on penalties. I don't know who would have predicted that. For Russia to do as good or as well as they did, they completely surprised me, man. Russia was low-key unstoppable for like a good portion of that tournament, playing good, fast football and low-key entertaining. I mean, pretty much every game that Russia played in, I was on the edge of my seat, bro. I was like, God damn, this version of Russia could go all the way if they realistically wanted to. And they just got a little lucky, and ultimately I think the right thing did happen. They finally met their fate against Croatia. But then you go to 2014, and obviously the one in Brazil, one of the more memorable World Cups, I think, in my opinion. And we saw Brazil just put on a show. A party is ultimately what they hosted, and everybody was just feeling those Brazilian samba, South American vibes. Obviously, it ended in insane fashion with that 7-1 beating against Germany. But still, Brazil entertained, had an incredible tournament going to the semifinals. And then in 2010, an interesting host with South Africa, a team who had made World Cup appearances before, but going into 2010 wasn't necessarily in the best of form, probably would not have qualified for the World Cup.
Yeah.
And so they were tasked with hosting the World Cup and entertaining their own people as well as the entire planet.
Dude, yeah, and who could forget that infamous the Shabalaba dance that happened where the whole team lined up after scoring against my beautiful Mexico.
Yes.
That in itself that's the essence of that host magic that you're talking about.
Exactly. And even though South Africa did not get past the group stage, they still put on a hell of a fucking performance, man. Over those 3 group stage games, they only lost 1 time. A win, a loss, and a draw. 4 points, and I think they only missed out based off of goal difference, if I'm remembering correctly. So that's very respectable for a team like South Africa, especially at the time in 2010. So absolutely, there's always a bit of magic that's tied to a host team in the World Cup. And low-key, I think Qatar has set themselves up for a bit of magic, brother.
Yeah, dude. And I mean, the one stat that fascinates me and that really just proves to me that magic is real is the stat that no host nation has ever lost their first game. That to me blows my mind, man. And it's still continuing on because Russia blew out Saudi Arabia, man. And I remember hearing that going into that South Africa and Mexico game. And I was thinking like, okay, that ends this year. That ends this year because Mexico's too good. Yeah. Mexico's too stacked. But what happens, bro? South Africa goes up on Mexico, and we're fighting for just 1 point against them.
Yeah.
There truly is something special about a host nation, and now we're going to see a really interesting matchup with Qatar and Ecuador being positioned against each other, and Ecuador being this young, feisty team trying to end that curse, trying to end that statistic in the hopes of potentially getting 3 points. It's crazy how much history Ecuador will have to overcome just to get 3 points.
Dude, that is an incredible point because, yeah, there's a lot riding on this, but absolutely, I could very well see Qatar line up against Ecuador and just use that host power, that will to drive them to at least get a point. I think it's very possible. But again, before we get into any sort of player analysis that we do have, I want to keep talking about this insane adventure Qatar has been on for the last 20 some odd years, bro. Because back in the mid 2000s, Qatar essentially said, we're investing in football. We're going to change how football is played in this country. We're going to invest into the league, into the stadiums, into the coaching staff, into the players that we bring into our league. And we're going to hope it amounts to something. But my God, I think it's actually worked. It's a hell of a project that has actually amounted to a fruitful product. Back in those mid 2000s, you know, they started using the money that Qatar had at their disposal, right? Trying to attract European talent. But more recently, man, they've gotten good African talent and actually some South American talent as well, on top of the already European draw that they've been able to amount to. And not only that, but they've also extended that to the coaching staff, getting good European coaches as well as good South American coaches. And you bring all of that together with the hopes that it can raise the standard of the average Qatari footballer. And I think it absolutely has.
Yeah.
When you look at some of these guys that are playing for Qatar here in 2022, you look at their career, and they started out in these Qatari academies back 10 years ago when they were 10, 11, 12 years old. And they started debuting when they were teenagers, bro. Debuting for their club and for their country because they had these elite coaches at these academies basically just showing them how to play top-level professional football. And now they're at a level to where they won the 2019 AFC Cup. They beat Japan 3-1 in that final. And I remember watching that game, and I was like, holy shit, Qatar have arrived. I remember watching that game and watching the whole tournament, honestly, because I was so curious to see. I was like, I had never seen Qatar play prior to 2019. And when I saw that they were here, I was like, okay, well, let me see what they got, because they got a World Cup to host in 3 years at that time. And my God, bro, if you watched every single game, you're like, where the hell did this team come from? Because they're incredibly organized. They actually have a bit of flair too, and they have some ballers on their team, just straight up. I was so impressed with that Qatari team in 2019. I did not think they'd win it, but when you see the games that they played, they were clearly the better team, and they dominated Japan. Dominated them. Now, I do think Japan have improved since then. I think other teams have improved as well. So I'm not going to go ahead and say that Qatar are the best team in Asia anymore. I think for a good 12 months they were. I think they've had some weird results recently. But overall, I think this incredible project that they built 20, 25 years ago has really worked, man. And I'm so impressed.
I think it's a sign, though, of how much... I honestly believe that the AFC conference has progressed in these past 10 years, man. They continue improving. We haven't done our deep dives yet on Japan or South Korea, but there's a general improvement happening amongst that confederation that is truly really impressive to see. Even just a quick note is that, like, for example, you look at Japan now, there's so many European-based players on that Japanese squad. You could say the same thing for what Qatar will eventually reach in their future. I see a future where a lot of these Qatari players might be positioned in, you know, those 5th, 6th level leagues in Europe, like a Netherlands or maybe in like Scotland or something. But that almost seems like the next logical step for them, because what they've done so far in these past 5 years has been so impressive, but also weirdly impactful, man. I feel like it's gone way better than what they expected it to go, and it's completely fit their timeline with them hosting the tournament, because when I saw that they won the 2019 AFC Asian Cup, I was like, how, bro?
Dude,
how?
The timing is impeccable, man. Like, are you kidding me? Like, this is what they have to offer now, and it's perfect, man. Yeah. If you're Qatar and you're a fan of this team, you're like, holy shit, we actually might have a chance to put on a good performance at this World Cup. There's something there. Yeah. And it's incredible because, seriously, bro, prior to 2018, I was like, Qatar, they're going to have a tough time at this World Cup. I just didn't see it. But, bro, the timing of it all is incredible. But I actually do think it starts with the coach, man. Felix Sanchez, the Spaniard, a part of this huge Qatari project where they're bringing in these very intelligent minds to just build this team. I think he's been in charge of Qatar since 2017, 2018. So they've given him full reins to just build his squad. And that big core that he brought together in 2019 to win in Asia are still here today to hopefully compete well at the 2022 World Cup.
Yeah, and I think what I saw from him was really impressive when you look at his resume, bro. This dude basically has been coaching Qatar like in their lower age levels like since the fucking U10, bro.
Yeah.
Like, he's been coaching U10, U14, U18, U19, U20, U21 up until he finally got the senior team job. And so it's so fitting. And you got a Spaniard at the helm, man.
Yeah.
And you know, I don't want to get selective here, but when I'm on FIFA and I'm making my ultimate team, I usually look for a Spaniard to guide my team. Man. So that's a good country.
Good coach.
That's a good country to pick your coach from, man. And
Yeah.
so Felix is going to be guiding this team into what is going to be such an exciting tournament for them because, bro, imagine, man, your first World Cup appearance ever is at home. Who else can say that, bro?
That's so
your
true,
first
bro.
appearance ever in the goddamn tournament,
Yeah,
man.
yeah.
And you mentioned it, how you really didn't know much about Qatar. Bro, I didn't know Qatar existed until they got selected for the World Cup, man.
Yeah.
I was like a 14-year-old kid back in 2012, I believe, when it was announced.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? Qatar? I came home to my mom and I was like, Mama, ¿qué es Qatar? ¿Qatar qué es? No sé dónde está. Because I had no idea, bro. But what's happened since that moment has been so just rejuvenating and nice to see because they really have put the money and the funds into developing something truly coherent. So earlier you mentioned that there's actually a little bit of flair to this Qatari squad, and my ears perked up when you said that, man, because Flair and Reynoso go hand in hand, man. I'm so eager to learn about who are the most exciting players on each team. Up front, I think there's a little bit of prowess up there. There's some good talent up there that has been scoring goals in their proper leagues that could potentially lead to something fruitful at the World Cup. Specifically, their two front players, Ali and Afif, that have been tearing up defenses for a while in their domestic leagues. How do you see these two players combining and matching up against bigger teams at the tournament?
Yeah, I think Akram Afif, from a technical perspective, has to be the most ball-oriented, dribble-style player that Qatar has to offer. And he has an incredible opportunity here to basically just pop off, to literally show the world what he can do with a football at his feet, and hopefully have a really good tournament, because if Afif is playing well, flying down that wing, just going at defenses, then I think Qatar will actually have a good chance, at least from a standpoint of maybe wreaking havoc, causing defenses maybe get a little bit out of shape, and then hopefully the Qatari players will have the prowess to actually finish some of their chances. I think that's going to be the biggest problem for Qatar offensively. Is I think they'll actually be able to go toe-to-toe against any defense. I actually don't doubt that. These players are technical and they know how to attack, I would say, virtually any defense. The only question I have is, can they actually take their chances when they get it? I think Qatar, when I do see them play against maybe bigger teams, for example, when they did play in the Copa America, or hell, even when they played in the Gold Cup against, let's say, the USA in that semifinal, they did struggle a little bit against bigger defenses, but even then, they still always had their chances. The difference between getting a result or not was whether they finished them or not. And I know that sounds generic, but I do think that's Qatar's biggest problem is, can they actually finish their open chances? Because other than maybe Almoez Ali, they don't really have a true goal scorer. Even Afif actually isn't known for being a ruthless goal scorer. He's more of a dribbler and a creator, which I think Qatar can use. It's going to be mainly up to Almoez Ali to actually finish these chances. The problem is, even in Qatar, for Al Duhail, the team that he plays for, he only gets like 9 to 10 goals per 24, 25 appearances. He's not even getting a 50% rate in that type of league. And at the end of the day, I do think he's a little bit wasteful. The only positive I have is that when he does play for Qatar, I think he's a little bit better. I think he rises up to that national team shirt. He was the Golden Boot winner in 2019 at the AFC Cup. So he's shown that he can perform well on a big stage. Just unfortunately, we don't really see it that often because he plays in the Qatari league. But ultimately, I think the biggest point of contention for Qatar's offense is going to be how good actually can Afif and Ali be together. It'll be interesting to see because we've never seen them do it against this type of teams.
Yeah, I think there's a genuine impact though that being at home can have, because they almost have the proper foundation that you would need to then have a special tournament. Like they have enough there is what I'm getting at, because bro, every game they're going to play, they're going to be at home. They're going to have their people rooting them on every single match. And I think that there's honestly something there, because if you look at the teams of the past that have hosted tournaments, fucking Cheryshev had one of the greatest offensive tournaments ever for his team. And he wasn't even going into the tournament the super crazy offensive option. Same with Golovkin, who also went off in that World Cup for Russia. And then I mentioned before, the Shabalaba for South Africa. Like, there's a certain quality you got to have to be able to have a special moment like that. And it sounds like these two players, either one, has enough to where if they do get that opportunity and they do finish it, man, they could become tournament favorites for these Qatari fans.
Shit, that is a really good point. That's basically what we're trying to get at, is that Ali and Afif actually have the tools to set themselves up for something special with this World Cup. They have it. And then dropping a little bit deeper, maybe right behind these two strikers, I think the guy that Qatar will be looking to have good creative moments and maybe feed Ali or Afif is going to be Hassan Al-Haidos, the captain, 31 years old. But this guy, dude, has been playing for Qatar since he was like 17. God, he has been in the system for a long time, bro. But what's crazy is
you probably saw like this new wave of players. Yes, they went from 10 players at the academy to like 200 one day. He was like, "What the hell is happening around here, man?"
No, low key, he was actually one of the first standouts from the academy products.
Wow.
Yeah, he was like the beginning of what Qatar was trying to build. Hassan Al-Haidos, at a very young age, he won the AFC Champions League with Al Sadd in 2011. Okay. So he won it a long time ago. A long time ago, but that's when he was really young. I think he was like 20 years old when he did win it. So yeah, he's been a big product for Qatar for a long time. When he does play, I believe he is the captain for the side, and he's one of the more creative players, at least from a passing perspective, for this team. The only thing is, he's just a little bit, maybe past his prime, just a little bit, but I think he still has enough in him to give a good 60 to 70 minutes per game to where he can get on the ball and try to create off the pass. And then alongside him, he'll have a lot more maybe defensive-minded players with Karim Bouriaf and Hatem. Two players that also did feature in that 2019 AFC Cup run, and two players that are good on the ball, and overall, I think a little bit more defensive, which they'll need for that midfield coverage.
Yeah, if you look at what Sanchez has gone with these past 3 friendlies, which, by the way, they all won. Yeah, pretty impressive. He's gone with these 3 guys. It's usually these 3 guys, like, for sure. They become staples of that midfield. That's interesting to see that they've already chosen the 3 players at the middle of the park. That's only going to give them more confidence and security to these guys. Yeah. But I do wonder, the question for me is their mental aspect. Can they handle going from such a, you could say, small league, man?
You can.
Being that they play in these domestic leagues or even just in Asian leagues, you could see the difference in what's going to be what they usually play every single week versus a completely jam-packed stadium in their home country with millions of people watching you. That in itself is a factor that we got to talk about, because, bro, they've never been at a World Cup before. They don't have any veterans that can talk about going this far and going this deep and playing at a tournament this high. It's upon themselves, man. It's about themselves, and maybe that's what the Copa America games and the Gold Cup games were for preparation, both on the field but also in the mental sense.
Yeah, no, that is an incredible point, because when I watch AFC Champions League and I always look at these Qatari or even UAE teams, their attendances are low, dude. Like, even the people really don't go out to these stadiums and watch them. I'd say most of the time it's like 50%. The most I've ever seen a Qatari stadium at club level full is maybe like 80%, bro. It's just not really there. But the thing is, when half the stadium is going to be Ecuadorian and the other half hopefully will be Qatari, and I think they will be, that's completely different. Absolutely. But you're right. They did the best that they could with their preparation by going to South America and playing the Copa America. Hell, they found themselves invited to the Gold Cup, bro. Like that, it is impressive how well their FA has gone out and be like, can we get competitive games? Mm-hmm. They've done the best, I think, honestly, I've ever seen a host nation do, and I think it has prepared them to an extent, but obviously this World Cup's just to be completely different that even like a European player maybe has never seen before. The first World Cup in the Middle East, this is definitely going to be an experiment, and there's going to be a lot of exciting things to see.
Yeah, I do feel like there's just ultimately too much ground for them to cover in too short of time, because we're talking about this World Cup as being the most talent-filled World Cup we've ever seen. For Qatar to be able to catch up to that would be truly ridiculous. But the beauty of the sport is that it puts them in a setting where even if they haven't technically caught up to it, they could show to us that the gap between them and maybe an Ecuador, maybe a Senegal, truly isn't that big, because we'll be at the biggest stage in world football. They'll have 90 minutes to prove to us that they truly do have the capabilities to go up against a quote-unquote better team.
This brings up the perfect point on why you actually should watch out for Qatar if you're a neutral, if you're going for them, or if you're one of their opponents, Senegal, Netherlands, or Ecuador. This entire team is domestic-based, just like Saudi Arabia. They all play in the Qatari league. But here's what's crazy, bro. Dude, they've been in the Qatar camp since August. Let that settle in.
Oh shit, like they haven't been at like a clubs or anything.
Their clubs have been going on. None of them have played for their club since July.
What?
Yep. They all picked out, because obviously they all play in the same federation,
Yeah.
right? So they said, look, if you're going to be called up by Sanchez, you're not playing for your club. You're going to play with Qatar. Our training is going to be just us. And it's been like that for 3 months.
Huh.
Yep.
Huh.
And if you've looked at their friendlies list, they're playing basically a game a week like you would at club level.
God damn, I didn't see that.
Yeah, and they're playing against random teams. They've actually
Yeah.
played against clubs. Like they've played against Slovenian teams or some shit like that. Yeah, just so they can get minutes out on
Yeah,
the pitch
yeah.
together. So this team has been playing together in training for 3 months now.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Man.
So this is the perfect way to prepare for your first World Cup. You cannot have a better way to prepare.
Huh.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
No, truly though. Yeah.
No,
Like,
truly.
It's just funny though because the context completely changes. We're talking about a team that's never been in the World Cup, so we're like, oh, that's interesting. But imagine if fucking Brazil did that.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I was thinking,
That'd be
bro.
fucking terrifying. Man.
Oh, God.
3 to 5 straight months of them just practicing every week. Good God, man, that's a different ball game.
But
But
see, like perfect football. If that happens,
but because it's Qatar, I'm just my ears are perked up. I'm like, huh. Interesting.
I think it can only help them at the end
Yeah,
of the day.
yeah, absolutely.
Especially for a team like Qatar, who they would need preparation with each other. And I think Sanchez this is a coach's wet dream, man. This is an international coach's wet dream to have all his entire 26 players together playing week in, week out, 3 months before World Cup. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But I do think it brings up a point of, look, Qatar is doing the best that they can to actually put on a good performance, and I don't think you can just completely outright sleep on this team.
Damn, dude. That's
Yeah.
a great point. Meanwhile, England's like fighting to get their players in the camp 1 week before the goddamn tournament.
Exactly, bro.
But Qatar's been planning this the whole time. That
Yeah.
is hella calculated, and it shows that the federation is really on top of their shit. Regardless if it'll end up in resulting in anything,
Right.
the fact they're doing this is honestly kind of impressive.
One last player I do want to highlight, because there's one other guy, Abdelkarim Hassan, the left wing back, former Asian Player of the Year back in 2018. And maybe that is a point of contention because I do think his form has dipped maybe just a little bit because he popped off in 2019 for Qatar at that cup, man. From like an impact point of view, he's kind of like an Asian Marcelo in the sense that like, dude, he goes up. At certain points when Qatar have offensive possession, he's essentially a winger. Like, he doesn't even look to track back. He just hopes his midfielder or his center backs cover his position defensively because he's just up there, bro. But he has the technical ability to actually be an offensive threat. So look out for Abdelkarim Hassan, hopefully, to have a really good offensive World Cup because he does have the skills to do so.
No, that in itself is pretty exciting, man. We've highlighted players that stand out to you and that you think could potentially pop off this tournament. And I mentioned the host factor. We could see any of these guys just have the tournament of their lives. So it's nice to see that there is some talent on this team, that the Federation has done well in the build-up to the tournament, and that they have a good coach at hand with Felix Sanchez who can look at these players and be like, okay, I'm going to get the best out of you guys in the hopes of having a magical tournament. I'm excited to see the Qatari people in Qatar showing up to this tournament and just representing their team and their country, man, because there's nothing better than that, man. Mm-hmm. And I'm interested to see if these Qatari fans are a loud fan base, man, if they're even a little rowdy, man. That'd be kind of nice to see. All in all, though, as I look at their scope in this tournament, when I do throw in the magic host factor, when I see them get matched up against Ecuador, Senegal, and Netherlands, I am a little bummed that they got drawn into probably one of the hardest groups in the tournament, man.
Yeah.
One of the hardest groups in the tournament. And I got to be real, man. I have to be real.
You have to.
The inexperience at the highest level for not just these players, but for the Federation ultimately does concern me. And when we talk about magic being attached to a team, I don't know if this team has enough of it to be able to pull off a Russia 2018. I think Qatar fights for that third place spot, but even then, I think I have them getting fourth place. I actually have them getting last in Group A. And as sad as that is, I still think that'll be a lot of progress for them because ultimately the way they'll go about these games will be what catch people off guard, will be what will truly surprise people because you know that this will be the best chance for Qatar to get all these eyeballs on them, for people to see truly what the progress of this nation has been. And it'll just be nice to see them, potentially have a really respectable game against Ecuador, maybe even tie them. Who knows? If they beat them, bro, then we're talking about a different story, bro. We're talking about a different story.
Yeah.
But then going up against Senegal and proving to be a tough team to beat, and more than all, going up against Netherlands. And if they show any sign of competitiveness in that game, then I'll be proud. Fourth place in Group D for me with the potential to fight for third.
I'm almost glad that they're playing Ecuador first, just from a neutral perspective, man, because let's say they were to play Senegal or Netherlands, I think that'd be a slightly harder task, 100% in my opinion. And to lose maybe 2-3-0 for the opener, I think would be tough to swallow and tough to recover from if you're Qatari. But I think Ecuador, again, and I've said it before, I think they're the next weakest team behind Senegal and Netherlands. So the fact that Qatar opens the tournament against a beatable team from a Qatari perspective, that gets me really excited.
Dude, it keeps the chances of that curse or stat alive. That is pretty crazy. If it's Netherlands, it's done, bro.
Oh, dude, that's true
crazy.
Too. Because at the very least, maybe they get a tie.
They get a tie. Yeah.
Yeah. Holy shit.
Interesting,
I didn't even think about it like that, but you're right.
Yeah.
My God. Well, then, you know what? In that case, I hope they keep that alive.
Okay.
I hope they at least get a draw. Maybe it's a dazzling one. It's 2-2 or some shit.
That'd be
Everyone
great.
gets entertained. But at the end of the day, man, I'm just going to basically echo what you said. I'm excited to watch Qatar. I'm going to be there. Like I said at the very beginning, I loved watching a host nation's journey. I really do. I'm going to be very excited watching every single game that this Qatar team sets out to play, but I do have them finishing fourth. I just don't have them getting out of this group. Like you said, my biggest reason actually isn't they don't have enough magically, but maybe it is, but my biggest reason is I think the talent that they have to go against in this group is just too much. Yeah. I think you're playing against the best team in Africa. I think you're playing against one of the more informed teams in Europe, and then you have an X-Factor team in Ecuador. That's a really fucking tough group. So hats off to Qatar for what they've been able to achieve. I'm very excited to see what they can do with this World Cup. So good luck. I'm very excited.
And that is Qatar. Make sure to let us know, what do you think about this Qatari team? Do you see them getting out of the group? Will that statistic continue going along for the host nation? Make sure to comment,